Today's show is all about the latest Detroit Lions free agency news and free agency rumors. We're going over free agency since it's coming up right around the corner, and there's a lot to go over, at least for the latest rumors here. Before we jump into this video, can we get to 300 likes? All you got to do is hit that like button. If there's an ad, hey, take a second, smash that like button. It really does push the content out there. So, free agency here is coming up in about, a little over a week, and we have some, news that's already hitting free agency that's related to the Detroit Lions, and that's last night that the Philedelphia Eagles releasing cornerback Darius Slay, former Detroit Lion cornerback, after Matt Patricia went and traded him away to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Slay is back on the free agent market. Well, he's able to sign with anyone. And this could be an option for the Detroit Lions, obviously. He literally spoke on this at the St. Brown podcast. You'd like Philadelphia or Detroit. Well, it's not going to be Philadelphia. He's just released. I like Darius Slay. I love Darius Slay. I think this is an option if we can't get our number one or number two options in free agency. And I'm going to assume they're first options in free agents, generally signing your own guys. We're talking about Carlton Davis, and we're going to get into him in a second for the latest for his rumors and where he is being tied to. But I would like the Lions to at least try some other, options before we jump into a Darius Slay. I love Slay, but he's a little bit long in the tooth. I'd like to have somebody that maybe is a little bit younger and have the ability to making plays all the time. Darius Slay is not what he used to be. He's still big play Slay. He can still make some big plays, and I will never say no to that because he does, but he's not the same that he was in Detroit, and so I think there's better options out there. With that said, if the Lions do fail with some of these options, why not the Detroit Lions then sign Slay, right? So I'm all for it if they failed the other plans for the cornerback position. So what do you guys think? Should the Detroit Lions sign Darius Slay? S for sign, P for pass. Here's the latest rumors regarding Carlton Davis. Now, I've been talking about it for a while. The Jaguars will gauge the market for veteran cornerback Carlton Davis, another third contract for the guy. Feller said, I told him, man, one of the best moves that we made, requiring you, getting you, this is Campbell talking to Carlton Davis, there's nothing better than a cover man who runs and tackles without fear. Carlton, they say, he's literally sat me down. He did with a couple times, during the season where I had a good game, and he'd come up to me, boy, you're playing your ass off. David said, we'll say that to you after the game, like, boy, you're more than just a cover corner. You're a physical tool, and you could say it in front of the whole team. He'll praise you in front of the whole team, and that's the first time a coach has ever did that. So Carlton Davis loves, obviously, Detroit, and he probably wants to come back to the Detroit Lions. But Jeremy Fowler say Jacksonville Jaguars expect to keep a close eye on Davis before free agency. So here's the deal. We don't know exactly, what other teams are going to offer Carlton Davis, but he is a prized free agent, in my opinion, and Jacksonville has been connected to Carlton Davis. Now, the rumor I heard about a month ago, or maybe longer, it could have been a couple months ago, is that Jacksonville was going to try hard for Carlton Davis. Now they're eyeing Carlton Davis. So maybe they're thinking the possibility that Detroit brings him back, and they're just kind of monitoring the situation. I hope that's the case. I hope that's what it is after reading this statement, is that Detroit brings back Carlton Davis, because he is a good corner. He was not fully healthy last year, and I get it, and I am with you in that. And, we need to have players that are fully healthy. But Carlton Davis can absolutely bring some good stuff to Detroit this year. In the next couple of years, it's all going to be depending on contract. That's what it's going to be. All depending on contract. So we'll see with Davis. Do you guys want Carlton Davis back? What do you guys think? Do you want him back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. There is more players that free agency. Mike Payton from ADC Sports believes the Detroit Lions realistically targets. And I 100% agree with these targets. I've talked about it, so we're not going to go over these players in great detail because we know about this. But this is the realistic options for the Detroit Lions for free agency. This is not what we want, as fans. This is the realistic options. This is what I think they'll do. And I looked at these players. I agree. I looked at the contracts that was set for these said players for free agency, and I agree. So it's really well breakdown. So I'm going to tell you, make sure you check this article out. A to Z Sports, Mike Payton. Let's go through the list really quick. The first player that he has, that's realistic to the Detroit Lions, is Khalil Mack. And his projected cost, a 2-year deal worth $45 million. This makes sense, right? You can bring in a guy for 2 years, and it's not going to affect the longevity of the Kirby Josephs, the Aiden Hutchinsons, and contracts in regards to the contracts, right, that we're wanting to step up. That's why I've been saying Khalil Mack makes the most sense in compared to other players that you see available, well, not available, but connected in via trade, i.e., Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Max Crosby. This makes more sense. 2-year, $45 million deal. I agree. The Lions then can draft a guy at 28 or at 60 or both for pass rush. You have a guy in Khalil Mack who's a veteran. You pair him up with a young player at the NFL draft. The Lions are then making smart decisions. So I agree with this. Next player is Azeez Ujulari. Yes, I've talked about Azeez Ujulari as well. 2-year, $10 million deal. This is another cheap deal. I think this could be a really smart deal because I thought he did pretty decent this year over there for the New York Giants. And this can be a really cheap option for Lions. Hell, you could do potentially both. And then even get a rookie or two in the draft. But we're trying to replace Marcus Davenport. We're not trying to replace Aiden Hutchinson. This makes sense there too. Paulson Adebo, I talked about the corner here on my channel many, many, many times, and I think this would make sense if Carlton Davis leaves in free agency. You get a Paulson Adebo 3-year, $33 million deal. You pair him up with Terrion Arnold, and you have Ennis Rakestraw. Now, Paulson Adebo, in my opinion, is probably not as good as Carlton Davis, but is a backup option, a plan B. I'd put Paulson Adebo above Darius Slay, in my opinion, if we were to talk about players to make an impact for the Detroit Lions via free agency. And so that is another guy that the Lions could look at. We have been connected to him as well. Darius Slay, clearly connected, right? A 1-year deal with $7 million. That makes sense, for Slay and where he at in his career. We've talked about Slay. He is definitely going to be connected to the Detroit Lions. Already is. Brandon Sheriff. Now, this is someone that we haven't been connected to. So this is the one that I haven't spoken about. This is the lineman. Interesting. I think he's coming from Jacksonville right there. 2-year, $13 million deal. This is if Kevin Zeitler was to leave in free agency. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think Zeitler would like to come back to Detroit. It makes sense, right? Maybe he gets Ben Johnson, tries to bring him over there to Chicago, tries to up the deal. If that's the case, remember, we did draft a guy in the draft in Christian Mahogany, who I think did well at left guard. But if they were to do that, if somehow Zeitler leaves, and I don't think that's the case, I think he could be an option for sure. I don't believe that Zeitler leaves in free agency, though. That's my personal belief. But that could make sense here. Keenan Allen, wide receiver. This one is a little bit off here. I'm not going to go with the Keenan Allen 2-year, $24 million deal, $12 million a year for Keenan Allen, who is going to be a number 3 for the Lions. If we were to take it, I would rather go to the draft. He's over the hill. We can find somebody parity in the draft. I'll take Tim Patrick over Keenan Allen right now, who will be cheaper. So I disagree with this said pick here in free agency. Doesn't really make sense to me. There's other options out there, and you probably go in the 3rd round. I mean, I literally did a mock draft yesterday. I've done 2 mock drafts where you can get wide receivers in the 3rd and the 4th round. That, in my opinion, would be a smarter option at wide receiver than Keenan Allen. But what do you guys think? Would you sign Keenan Allen, S for sign, or P for pass? A to Z Sports gets on another one here, talking about a player that the Lions should sign in free agency. This player here, it's Bleacher Report's. Alex K feels that the way they recently put together a list of best fits for some top free agencies, and he projected the Lions will sign Eagles interior defensive lineman Milton Williams. Here's his thoughts on the fit. The Detroit Lions would be an ideal landing place for Williams. Not only would he reinforce the defensive line cratered last season after a string of injuries, but he'd be an ideal position to dominate and contend for more Super Bowls by working next to elite edge defender Aiden Hutchinson. He pressured at 2 sacks, forced fumbles, is pretty good. He had a decent season with 40 pressures and 6 sacks. And look, if the Lions need an interior defensive lineman, and that's 100% facts. We've talked about Lee McNeil is going to be injured, and I don't expect him to be back halfway through the season, so you're going to have someone there. You're going to want to have depth as well. What if Levi leaves? You can do this. You can draft a guy. But interior defensive lineman is, and we don't know what's going on, Broderick Martin is an option. I don't know how much it would take to get Williams here. Maybe it's a little bit prized. But look, make no mistake about it. We need to get we need to get interior defense. We need to get trenches and defensive line, and this is a big deal. If Williams can help with that, I'm cool with it. But the other options is the NFL draft. If you don't want to outpay for some of these interior defensive linemen, just don't get Broderick Martin because he hasn't done anything yet. And from what I heard is, he may not even be on the team, may not make the 53-man roster. So he is a cut candidate. There's 100%, and the Lions do need interior defensive line. So give me your thoughts on these free agency rumors in the comments. With that said, folks, adios.